We gather in religious community for many reasons: to see the faces we know, to share what is in our hearts, to take stock of the week that is ending. And this community offers us more in return: new faces that expand our knowing, the experiences of others that shed light on our own, the spiritual resources that embolden us for the week that is beginning. For this community is the place where change begins, within you, within me, within our world. We are called to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable. Let us do both with courage and abundant compassion. And so we light our flaming chalice in gratitude for this faith that has brought us together, for the ways in which it comforts us and for the ways in which it challenges us, and for this congregation as a place where we can work out what it means to be faithful people together. This morning, we're going to do something that we haven't done in 3 years, and that's hold our water communion together. The last time was in the fall of 2019. And then, of course, the pandemic started in 2020. And water communion, like almost all of the rest of congregational life, was disrupted. We did hold a drive-up water communion where people could come in their own time over the course of a week and pour the water they brought from home into our common bowl. But of course, that's not the same as all of us being part of the same ritual together at the same time. There's some debate about whether we are now post-pandemic or not, but it doesn't really make a difference. COVID-19 isn't going away. We'll get boosters for it every year like we get flu shots. And in the meantime, we all need to learn what it means to be in community again, what it means now to be in multi-platform community. Some things will never go back to the way they were before, and we need to be careful of assumptions like rubber bands trying to pull us backwards. Some things we'll have to imagine into new existence as we try to figure out how to move forward. Thankfully, there's plenty we can start doing again without too much having to change. Today, as I said, we're holding our water communion together again, a Unitarian Universalist tradition going back over 40 years. One of the most obvious defining features of our religion, fourth only to the flower communion, the flaming chalice, and the side with love heart. We held a big potluck at the start of the month, and immediately following this service, we're holding a soup social too. Next weekend, we're holding our retreat for the first time that we found out we couldn't use Pocahontas State Park anymore. Thanks to Joanne's hard work in finding us a location, we'll be at the 4-H Center in Jamestown. And thanks to our new multi-platform reality, both the forum and the service next Sunday will take place live here in the sanctuary, at the 4-H Center, and on Zoom as usual. Well, we'll see. The title I chose for that service is "We Can Do Hard Things," so let's hope I'm right about that. Our choir, the UUFP chorus, is starting up again too. We're looking for a new choir accompanist to hire, but in any case, we're planning for the choir to sing at our Climate in the Pulpit service on October 23rd. And another UUFP tradition that's all about food, fellowship, and fun is coming back as well, namely the auction on October 29th. So start figuring out what costume you're going to wear now. There's no denying that the pandemic was difficult and disruptive on many fronts. It was hard on congregations. It was hard on schools. It was particularly hard on families. Given what we're all experiencing, thanks to COVID and the dumpster fire of the 45th presidency, an independent panel of healthcare experts is drafting first-of-their-kind recommendations that all adults under 65 should be routinely screened for anxiety. As a society, we have experienced collective trauma and moral injury. So it's understandable that we've been yearning for the comfort of familiarity. Yes, there are things we need to learn anew, but I'm so glad, so reassured that here at the UUFP, we are remembering, literally putting back together again who we are as a religious community. I'd been a member of the Unitarian Society of Hartford for only a few months when something very strange happened. The congregation shut down for the summer. Since I was a new member, I didn't know that was going to happen. So I asked someone why. Oh, she said with all sincerity, it's because everyone goes to Cape Cod for the summer. Really? Everyone? I didn't go to Cape Cod for the summer. I had a job. And I didn't get that much vacation time, even if I could afford to go somewhere. And the person who told me that didn't go to Cape Cod either. And in fact, none of the people I had got to know in the congregation went to Cape Cod for the summer. Then I found out that while the Unitarian Society of Hartford was closed, the Universalist Church of West Hartford continued to hold services, and we were invited to attend them. Nice idea. Only on the Sundays that I went, I didn't see anybody else from my congregation. Then the last Sunday of the summer came. So I went to the Universalist service, and it was something called water communion. I didn't know what that was, except that a number of people took turns coming up front and pouring some water from some place they'd been over the summer into a bowl. It didn't really seem to be about anything other than those people telling the rest of us about their fabulous travels. And if you've ever had to sit through somebody else's slideshow of all the pictures they took while on vacation, it was just as fun as that, only without the pictures. And for those of us who hadn't traveled anywhere during the summer, well, there was no role for us in this travelogue ritual. Later on, I learned the stories of the flaming chalice and the flower communion, amongst other parts of our Unitarian Universalist history. I learned that the flaming chalice was created as a symbol to help people get out of Nazi Europe during World War II. I learned that the flower communion was celebrated before the war at the Unitarian Church in Prague to celebrate the beauty of each person and the beauty of the community that we make together. I never heard any such story of the water communion, though. Even after my congregation stopped shutting down for the summer, I guess the leadership finally realized that no, not everyone goes away. And we started doing the water communion ourselves. It was still all about the travelogues. Even in seminary, in the classes I took on specific UU subjects, there was nothing about the water communion. My colleagues and I were aware of the significance of water in many religions, of course, a symbol of birth, of life, of purity, of health. We were also aware of the potent symbolism of people coming together and each pouring water into a common bowl. How that could represent how we make our community together. Otherwise, our UU history books were silent. A few years after I came here to the fellowship, we finally got the answer we had been seeking. Thanks to someone doing some research in the UUA's archives, the origin story of the water communion was at long last rediscovered, published, and shared. Now we know that the water communion was created at the 1980 UU Women and Religion Continental Convention in Michigan. Lucille Shuck Longview, Carolyn McDade, and others developed a worship service to celebrate their connectedness to one another, to the totality of life, and to their place on this planet. And they chose water as a symbol of women's spirituality. Though the waters poured into a common bowl had come from different places all across the continent, as brought by the women participating in the conference, the sharing was about what the water meant, what it represented for all of the women who were there. The water communion was not intended to privilege individual ability and wherewithal to travel, but to celebrate a spirituality that uplifts, empowers, and connects, specifically calling the women participating to strength, to action, and to full expression. In other words, the water communion was created as a feminist ritual that had nothing to do with individual travelogs and everything to do with community spirit. Since the rediscovery of this origin of the water communion, many UU congregations have been reclaiming its original intentions, not because some taskmaster at the UUA told us that we had to, but because we independently enjoy the freedom to seek a more meaningful expression of community spirit for our 21st century reality. So as we have come to practice the water communion here, our pouring of water into the common bowl represents what each of us brings to this community, what it is from our own lives that we're pouring into the life of this congregation. Today, as I said earlier, is the first time in 3 years that we're holding the water communion together. In this maybe post-pandemic reality, as we are remembering who we are as a religious community, it's a good time to celebrate who we are together, to remember that everything we are is what we bring with us and share with one another. I have a few wondering questions to ask you now, and I'll give you a little time after each to reflect. I wonder what brings you to this community. I wonder how you are comforted by being here. I wonder how you are challenged by being here. I wonder what you are trying to put back together after 2.5 years. I wonder what you bring to this community. welcoming new members, celebrating the water communion, holding a UUFP retreat, enjoying potlucks and soup socials, singing together and hearing the choir sing, book discussions and study groups and auctions and fundraisers and parties and Christmas Eves. Can you feel it? Can you feel that we're putting things back together again after the 2.5-year-long disruption of the pandemic? I can feel it, and I want to feel more of it, because this matters. Who we are together matters a lot. It matters that after 3 years, we are able to once again celebrate who we are as a community together through the symbolism of the water communion. As I've tried to explain to different people over the years, there's no magic to this. There's no mystical secret. We are in community with one another because, and to the extent that we choose to be in community with one another. Because we believe that learning how to be in community with people who are different from us is the only thing that can truly save the world. If only it were as simple as pouring some water into a bowl. If only it were a matter of showing up and doing one thing, everybody doing the same one thing, and poof, we're in community. It is not, of course, that simple. Far from it. When it comes to learning how to be in community with people who are different from us, well, everybody is different from us. No two of us in this room or on Zoom are the same. And yet most of us spend most of our time assuming that our own experiences and opinions and beliefs and preferences are pretty much representative of everyone else's. The first thing that being in community requires of us is a whole lot of humility so that we can challenge that assumption and accept the most important lesson that the universe has to teach us. It's not about you. So while joining a community and being in community and staying in community are hardly as simple as pouring water into a bowl, the water communion is still a powerful reminder that everything we are together is what we bring with us and share with one another. The potlucks and the singing and the workshops and the parties, those happen because we make them happen. Because people step up and raise their hands and give of their time, talent, and treasure to make sure they happen. To paraphrase the saying about democracy, Unitarian Universalism is not a spectator sport. The UUFP exists because each of us plays a part in bringing it to life. In that spirit, I'm going to close with words of the Reverend Kristen Grassel-Smith, who I met in our first year as ministers and now serves the mission of the UU Church of Silver Spring, Maryland. From separate lives and different histories, we meet, merge, and flow as one. Here, in community and sacred space. Now, in the midst of all that makes life most abundant. May all that frees us be in us, with us, and among us today, and fill us with truth, beauty, and love as we reconnect with our purpose and reimagine how to live out our prophetic faith in a hurting world that needs exactly the gifts we have to give it. May it be so.